So the next theme is Vitamin C with the title Proposal on Amendments to STCW and MLC due to mess. Please welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Our team, the Vitamin C, would like to present our study, which is titled Proposal on Amendments to STCW and the MLC due to the mass. First of all, I would like to introduce the mass and the problems associated with it, and then give basic facts about the related laws that we want to amend. After that, our next presenters will give facts about the status of the seafarer and the captain, and also give solutions about the amendment of international agreements. To first of all introduce the mass, it is called the Maritime Autonomous Surface Ship. The IMO has defined the mass as a ship which can operate independent of human interaction, and the mass is progressing actively in shipbuilding powers such as China, Japan, and Europe. There have been calls that there is a need to revise regulations according to the development of the mass. But in the first place, we have to know why we need the mass anyway. Autonomy, as we have discussed before, is now a necessity for the maritime industry to remain competitive. As James Fanshawe, chair of the UK's Maritime Regularity Group puts it, 90% of trade by volume comes through the sea, and making sure that trade can move safely around the world and through the sea is something that we must focus on. Autonomy will be critical in the future and in developing the maritime system, so this is why that we have chosen this subject to present. Although autonomous ships offer better options, risk in shipping will remain. In conventional ships, the captain was in ultimate charge of the ship. However, as the system requires professional technology, land remote control operators, also known as shore-based operators, need to be noticed more than ever since they have the ability to control the ship. The IMO has begun evaluating the need for modified regulations for autonomous ships in international trade. The international regulations require multilateral agreements among the various countries participating in particular trade, and there is a need to hurry and start this discussion. There exist some barriers that are in the way of the development of the mass, and I would like to present the current problems. One is related to the employment and education of human resources. Though in the short term we may experience a downsizing in sailor-related industries, mass is expected to give new roles and jobs to people. For example, like ship operations managers that work at land or technicians that operate. However, the main problem is the lack of professional personnel. It is estimated by 2025 there will be a shortage of 14.7 million technicians. And also another problem that we want to suppress is about the responsibility related with the mass. Currently, when a ship is affected by damage, the owner of the ship needs to compensate for the harm. And after that, the owner can accuse the captain of the ship to take responsibility. However, if people do not board on these ships, and if it becomes autonomized, this will lead to the ambiguity of who will take responsibility. Will it be the captain, the sailors, or will it be the mechanicians of the ICT system? Currently, the STCW and the MLC exist, and inside it, the Seaman Law exists too. The legislative purpose of this act is to let them know exactly what their duty is on land and what their duty is to develop various education programs for them in order to give them proper training. But as the definition of a seaman is changing, it is a need to discuss what the meaning of the seaman is in the 21st century. Can we call ship managers who work at land or the programmers who control the shipment too? A new definition must be made in order to renew the education and training the crew should receive and recreate the regulations related to the problems of responsibility. The Seaman Law is currently being applied as an international law by the IMO, but now it is necessary to suggest why this act and how this act should be amended. Now our next presenter will give the basic facts about the ship.
Mass can be divided into 3 phases depending on whether the crew and the RAN remote controller are involved. First, on R stage, there are a sailor on the ship and an operator on the land who remote controls the ship. The owner of the ship has to determine whether to give the position of captain to the sailor or an operator on the land. As the automation rate increases, there will be less tasks given to the crew on board, and the role of land worker will become crucial. The next stage of mass is RU stage. As the automation rate increases on RU stage, nobody embarks on the ship, and only the remote control operator on the land leads and supervises the ship. On R stage and RU stage, whether the remote control operator on the shore can be treated as a seafarer should be discussed. The last stage of mass is A stage. It is the complete stage of mass. There are no sailor or an operator who controls the ship. Artificial intelligence is the only thing that takes responsibility of sailing. The existing crew law will change as a result of appearance of the land remote control operator due to the emergence of mass. So whether the remote control operator has a seafarer status is the issue. So let's discuss the seafarer status of land remote control operator. STCW and MLC both define seafarer status as the crew of a board that provides work, the crew of a ship that provides work on board. For the side of denial, they insist that the phrase on board is the absolute requirement to define the term. Therefore, remote control operator who works on land is not recognized as a seafarer. He's just a simple assistant. Also, at the shipping company, the staff on land is not treated as a sailor. So, remote control operator who simply assists the sailing of the vessel on the land can't get his seafarer status. For the side who agreed the seafarer status, they insist that existing convention and municipal laws were established when we never expected about the appearance of mass. Therefore, it is unreasonable to regulate the absolute requirement of seafarer status based on the phrase on board. The amendments of the term will be needed considering the technical development. Since remote control operator on board is the one who implements the job as a marine officer, it is reasonable to include their seafarer status. As mass appeared, the duty of a sailor is just transferred from sea to land. Now, the next presenter will present the amendment of the international agreements.
In the future stages of mass, shore-based operators will be responsible for most roles seamen hold. In fact, remote operators will be given final and complete command authority over ship operation and safety. Thus, these operators should be given the authority of master. To do so, we believe international conventions must first be revised to grant seafarer status to shore-based operators. Subject of such revision are the STCW and the MLC. Currently, the STCW defines seafarer as any person who is employed or engaged or works in any capacity on board a ship to which this convention applies, and the important word here is on board a ship. And though the MLC does not clearly define seafarers, Article 3 of MLC states, the convention shall apply to seafarers serving on board seagoing ships entitled to fly a flag of a party, except to those serving on board following the ABCD. And again, the important word here is serving on board seagoing ships. This implies that both the MLC and the STCW define seamen as those who works on board a ship. Therefore, we believe both the STCW and the MLC must be modified to include shore-based operators as seamen to effectively take action against the changes mass will bring. And furthermore, the IMO should revise the STCW to set a global standard in education of shore-based operators. Our team proposes that STCW Part A, Section A, and Article 2, which regulates management level, should be amended for re-education of original seafarers and education for apprentices. In the case of unmanned aviation vehicles, short for UAVs, the Chicago Convention was amended, allowing Nation A to revise its operator certification responsibilities like the following. Major amendments include qualifications of operators, like mandatory testing of aviation-related knowledge and re-evaluation every 2 years. We believe the STCW should also be revised in similar context. STCW should include a new education model and make ICT-related certificates mandatory. Furthermore, all tests should be re-evaluated every 2 years. The following diagram illustrates the new education model. In this model, IMO will select education groups in each country, and these are just an example, and will certify education given by these groups. By doing so, we expect to accomplish a fair education quality globally and to set a global standard of seafarer education. Certification will be given to programs that provide education to new qualification of seafarers, including shore operators. Currently, STCW Part A classifies the crew's essential crew capabilities as sea voyage, unloading and loading, control of ship operations, and management of captain's life, ship engine engineering, electronic and control engineering maintenance, and repair radio communications. However, as mass and shore-based operators appear, there's a need to include ICT certificates as a mandatory qualification, as information security and remote control becomes a crucial ability. The best proposal is getting an international organization to take charge of this in a professional manner. We propose that organizations such as the UNCTAD, which stands for United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, which is the main UN body dealing with trade issues, should take charge of these qualification problems for a safer trade. And if this is impossible, it is at least necessary to obtain a certification by a national agency of each country. The second proposal is to amend the MOC to ensure the welfare of shore-based operators in Title II, Conditions of Employment, Regulation 2.1, Seafarers Employment Agreement Standard A 2.1. To begin with, working hours must be regulated. Seamen work 24 hours a day, and they are always prepared on emergency situations and are fully capable of taking cover. However, there's a limit to training operators about emergencies, and they need to be available in short time to solve problems. And especially in stages before the A stage, it is mandatory for a technician to be on deck. Accordingly, there is a need to adjust the working hours of shore-based operators to make sure that there is at least one person of each area of ship technology exists. In addition, in case of emergent problems, operators need to be available in at least 1 hour of their working area. In this case, they need to live close or provide accommodants for the operators, and there is a need to make provisions according to this problem. Furthermore, some operators need to be on ship before the ship turns into a fully autonomous level. There may be technical problems that can be solved only on the ship. And furthermore, the weakness of mass is that even in the A stage, it is impossible to deal immediately with problems on ship. And therefore, we believe that working hours and accommodants and making sure that there is at least one technician for each area is crucial. To conclude, development of mass has created a new form of seafarers who operate ship at land. Therefore, the revision of STCW and MOC to include new qualifications and ensure working environment of shore operators is inevitable. Even if technology develops and mass becomes fully adaptable, there must first be legal infrastructure so that the technology can be used safely. Therefore, we request the revision of STCW and MOC to include new qualifications and ensure working environment of shore operators and take appropriate action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will take questions from judge first if you have, so please feel free to raise your nameplate. Yes.
Thank you for the wonderful presentations for the future and upcoming issues. But one thing I would like to point out is that in terms of gender equality issue, it would be highly appreciated if you could refrain from using seamen. There's a good word, the seafarers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good answer. Next question. Culture shock.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation. Our team's name is Culture Shock. And
Would you speak a little bit
yeah.
loudly, please?
okay, and in recent environments, a lot of captains just drive their ships directly. But as you mentioned, when you the environment's changed, how about on the land of the pilot, and just get rid of their controlling right, and how they could get some other rights instead of that kind of things.
I'm sorry, can you
When
that
the
again.
environment could be changed by your suggestion, and how the pilot can get some other.
Sorry, how, what? How? I cannot hear you as
The
well, sorry.
pilot, how is there anything that pilot can get from that changed environment? Some kind of rights or duties or things.
So
like
you
that?
mean how pilot should
Yeah.
behave
Yeah.
as per mass?
Yeah, right.
Pilot.
Thank you for your question, and I get the point that you're trying to ask why the change of environment for the seafarers is beneficial to our regulation, and as the seafarers are changing their role to as the seafarers are changing their role because of the development of mass, they are needed more essentially, and they are needed more in close access, because in the past they did not need to be in close access because the seafarers or the captain on the ship could control the environment, but now they need to be in close contact. So by the regulations we have given through our presentation, it will be available to get them fastly if they are living in a closer environment. And that is why we put those regulations in our amendment of the MLC. Thank you.
Swiss cheese.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this delegate would like to express sincere gratitude for your presentation. And as you mentioned in phase 2 revision of MLC, basically we believe that MLC is for those who work offshore, not onshore. Then we'd like to hear why you chose the MLC is have to revised. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The reason why we chose the MLC is because, well, the MLC stands for Maritime Labor Convention, and because we believe that operators who work ashore should also be called seafarers, we believe that there must also be labor regulations to them also, and because the premise of our proposal was that people who work, or seafarers or operators who work at land should also be called seafarers. So that's why we thought that the definition of seafarers should be changed, and that also applies to the MLC. Thank you.
Polar voyage, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, we would like to express our gratitude for your presentation about valuable issues. We are in line with your proposal. Proposal on amendment to STW and MLC due to mass also will be definitely be important laws. However, we have concerns that the developing of rule for safety measures between current vessels and mass. For example, in case of incidents involving crushing between between current vessels and masts, how we can judge for them? Thank you.
Thank you for shedding light on a very important matter, but I believe that it is a bit off topic with our proposal, because what we focused on was that we should provide education for a new type of seafarers, and actually the part where you discuss crashes is related to COLREC, which is a different international convention. But we surely emphasize that because because of a new type of seafarers, which is ship operators at shore, liability issues can change, and our first presenter first pointed out that it can change because it can change on the occupation of the shore, of operators at shore. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. A question from Judge.
Thank you for your interesting issue and the agenda. The maritime autonomous surface ship is, we have to understand to the definitions from stage 1 to stage 4. Until the second stage is the manned ships. However, is the third and fourth, the stage ship is unmanned ships. That is why we need to the remote operating. Remote operate is starting point is the second stage. And so maybe I got questions to the remote operator. What is different between the remote operator and seafarer? Seafarer, which is required to the certifications, the ability to operate the ships. Could you tell me the difference?
Originally, the STCW and the MLC defined seafarers as people who work on ship, and their occupation was divided in mainly two parts. Seafarers who would work on deck, and seafarers who would work as mostly like technicians or engines. And the main difference between those seafarers and shore operators is that shore operators need to have a general understanding of both the deck and the engine, whereas original seafarers would only have to be specialized in one. And furthermore, because shore operators need to remote control, we believe that they also have to have an understanding of ICT technology. Thank you.
So we have to understand to the remote operating is to the random basis control to the ships. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Park, for your clear explanation on remote controller. I think time is not enough to get on more questions, so let's finish and I will move to the next team. Thank you very much. You can return to your seat.